Welcome to the Simply Wholehearted podcast with Amy Wicks, your wholehearted life and business coach. You should know this podcast will inspire you to grow in self-awareness, be passionate about your faith, and get clear on your calling. If you are new here, then welcome to a community of multi-passionate women who love to go deep on topics like faith, Enneagram, relationships, leadership, and community. This conversation might provide the step you need to make the change you desire. So, let's get started. Today's recap episode is all about a topic that is often filled with both hope and hesitation. What is it that we're talking about? Well, if you looked at the title, you know. These conversations are going to be all about money. For many of us, finances feel like an area where we either thrive or struggle, but the truth is, abundance isn't about a number. It's about stewardship, wisdom, and alignment with God's purpose. Now, in this recap episode, I'm offering highlights from day 3 of the Wholehearted Abundance Summit, where there were real, honest conversations about money, how to manage it, how to shift our mindset around it, how to pursue financial peace and generosity, and what your personality type, i.e. Enneagram, has to do with how you handle money. I did a full session about spiritual warfare and finances, and I gave a deep dive into practical steps for each Enneagram type. I couldn't share the full session here in this episode, but at the end of this episode, I'm sharing the portion where I give a tip for each of the 9 Enneagram types. So it's a little bit of a longer clip, but I felt like you would appreciate if I gave you all the insights for each Enneagram type. Now, I have a few other day 3 highlights that I'm going to share in this recap, but I also wanted to give you a sneak peek into some of the other sessions for day 3 for the Wholehearted Abundance Summit. My friend Francine Ivy did a powerful session on what kingdom success actually looks like. She broke down biblical truth about success, wealth, and abundance so that way those who listened could ditch the guilt, silence the fear, and step into all that the Lord had for them. Another powerful speaker and friend, Christy Miranda, she shared about how to align faith, family, and finances for real-world kingdom impact. And within 30 minutes, she gave 6 major takeaways. And a new friend to me, Melissa Edmondson, she shared about stepping into abundance, how to trust God's plan beyond what you see. She shared some from her personal journey and also gave practical steps to live out an abundance mindset. On day 3, there was also a Voxer panel discussion. It was several women who were sharing about shifting their scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. And that's where we're going to start this recap today. One of the Voxer panel speakers, Gwen Sledge, who happens to be a wholehearted coach, she sets up the whole conversation about financial abundance from a biblical perspective. Now, do not let her Southern Enneagram 6 calming voice fool you. In the brief segment that I shared, she truly shows up and preaches about fear, especially around finances. Now, before we jump into that clip, remember, what you're hearing in these recap episodes, they're just a glimpse of what was covered in the full sessions. If you're ready to transform your approach to finances and learn how to flourish in faith and family, you can still get the VIP Access Pass. It gives you lifetime access to all the teachings, plus bonus resources, and a private podcast feed where you can listen to all the sessions at your leisure. I've put the links there in the show notes, in addition to all the ways that you can learn more about the speakers that you're going to hear from today. All right, let's jump right in to hear what Gwen Sledge has to share with us today.
Gwen here. I find that oftentimes my scarcity mindset rises to the surface when I'm lacking trust in God's sovereignty over my future. One definition of abundance that I found states, in quotes, a life full of everything you need to be sustained in joy and purpose, end quote. So when I think of abundance from that perspective, I'm reminded that so much more is included here than actual money. I would say that every year that I've walked with the Lord, He's helped me to better understand and embrace this abundance mindset. But again, it has been a definite challenge for me and always a work in progress. But recognizing that true abundance comes from not from having more than enough money, but walking in step with where the Lord calls and knowing that He'll provide everything that I need to fulfill that calling. So, practically speaking, I would say that the best way for me to keep an abundance mindset is to be continually reminded of what God says about abundance. And as I look through, John 10:10 says, "The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but He came that we may have life and have it abundantly." So, what does that mean for us? Earlier in that chapter, we're told that He's the shepherd and that we're His sheep, that we follow Him because we recognize His voice. So, as I find that as I keep my ears and my eyes fixed on Him and He leads me each day, stewarding my time and my finances as He instructs. His faithfulness through the years to provide for us fuels both my trust and my obedience for the future. Over the years, however, God has intentionally and very specifically called us at times to reduce my work hours or even my income more than once in order to pursue the calling that He had for us in that season. So there's been this tension between my desire to walk in obedience, even when it feels like at times I'm acting irresponsibly from a financial perspective. While we know that God calls us to live within our means and to be good stewards of His provisions, they are all just that, His provisions. So I've learned that when I trust His direction and walk in it, that inevitably that is what has led us back to the abundant life, much more than my plans ever would have. More recently, He has brought Ephesians 3 to my mind over and over again. And Paul's speaking to the church members at Ephesus, praying for their spiritual strength. And he says, starting in verse 14, "I pray that He may grant you, according to the riches of His glory, to be strengthened with power in your inner being through His Spirit, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. I pray that you, being rooted and firmly established in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the length and width, height and depth of God's love, and to know Christ's love that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with the fullness of God." That, my friend, is my idea of abundance. That wealth is found in having an abundance of Him, and everything else is overflow, even and especially in our financial security. I love the way that the New King James words Ephesians 3:20, as Paul goes on to say, "Now, to Him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us, to Him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations." This is the reminder that keeps me focused on what abundance truly is and puts finances back into its rightful place in my life.
Now, this clip is also from that Voxer panel chat. Kristin Herman, who shared last year at the Equip and Activate conference, is going to talk about what is enough when it comes to finances. And I love her Enneagram 3 perspective and her insight on intergenerational mindsets that are important to examine.
I'll start by saying I know plenty of people who have an abundance of resources, yet live with a scarcity mindset. You may have heard the famous John D. Rockefeller quote. So he was America's first billionaire. And when asked how much money is enough, he said, just a little bit more. And when we're focused on externals, the benchmark is always moving. So yeah, the question is, when is it ever enough? And culture cues us to believe that we have to earn or prove our worth by the house we live in, our accolades at work, the trips we take, the appearance of our bodies. But what if abundance is a state of being rather than a state of having? I'll say that again. What if abundance is a state of being rather than a state of having? A critical shift for me happened when I found secure attachment to God rather than being anxiously attached to outcomes in my exterior world. I realized through doing inner work and engaging with my story, looking at, okay, what have I been cued to believe? As Cynthia pointed out before, the way that we view money and abundancy versus scarcity is intergenerational. And as well-meaning and as prudent as my parents were, I had learned anxious attachment from them. So I realized I used to live with this conditional sense of well-being. Like, I'm okay as long as there's enough money in the bank, as long as I'm performing in my work, as long as my kids aren't whining or fighting incessantly with each other. But finding secure attachment to God helped me make the shift from not just believing in my head of what he says about who I am, but also in my heart, in my whole being, that I am worthy of love and belonging because of who I am and whose I am, not because of what I do or earn. Worthiness is so critical, and it is a gift to receive. It can't be earned. And as an Enneagram 3 who is hardwired to achieve and perform, it has been so liberating for me to be able to still seek to make a great impact. I want to steward my talents well, but I can do that from a place of identity rather than trying to earn it. And when my worthiness and my attachment to him as his beloved daughter is settled, I can hold my life and the people and things in it in a surrendered posture, believing, Lord, all that I am, all that I have belongs to you. And so the Bible verses that say, like, the cattle on 1,000 hills are his, I think when we're not securely attached to him, it's easy to live with this orphan mindset of, like, do you really believe what he says? Versus, just, okay, Lord, you love me. What we really want, that secure attachment, is we want to know that we're delighted in and to be able to be held in contemplative silence. And so by God's grace, I went through some challenging times that he met me there and really spoke that truth and broke off some of those agreements from my family of origin, of having lived with some of that orphaned mindset and scarcity mentality. And so from there, pursuing living in alignment with who he made me to be, with my values, my mission, having more clarity around what brings me joy, and focusing on my experience of life rather than trying to create outcomes. Like, how am I experiencing this? Is this bringing me joy, or am I like trying to just crank something out and I'm feeling miserable in the process, or I'm not tending to the people, the cares, the needs around me in a way that truly is in alignment with my heart and what matters most. So with that perspective, my life has been so much richer and more enjoyable.
Okay, this next clip is really powerful. There is a very specific habit that you could start today that is going to transform your finances. This next segment is from Samantha Compton, and I want to make sure that you tune in and pay attention. So if you're multitasking, pause and listen all the way through. You're going to be so glad you did.
I'm going to focus on 3 things today, and these are going to be 3 little foxes, 3 little habits that come in and steal your financial future. And as I've been thinking about this topic, this verse strikes me, right? It's from Song of Solomon 2:15, and it says, "Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin our vineyards that are in bloom." So there's lots of abundance happening, but these little foxes are coming in. And I thought, man, I really want to learn more about that. So I was researching. And so Google and AI tell me, and it says, according to them, it says little foxes ruin a vineyard by going in and gnawing at the roots and the stems of the vine. Okay, so they're not necessarily getting to the fruit. They're over time, they're gnawing at the roots and at the branches. And so what is happening is when they're doing that down in the shadows, nobody's watching them, it's happening over time. But as they're doing that, it limits the water and the nourishment that needs to get up to the top to be able to produce the fruit. And so it's not necessarily noticed until the fruit isn't as healthy or the plant isn't producing as much fruit. And so it can go on for a while, but the cumulative effect of that is going to affect the goal that was to have healthy fruit on the vine. And that's the goal. And so as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about in the context of our finances. And so I wanted to give 3 examples. I mean, there's many other things, but just 3 practical things that you guys can put your mind to. The first one is probably the most definable and actionable. Okay, so the first fox we're going to talk about is the little fox number 1 that can steal your financial future is signing up for trials or services and then forgetting to cancel them or forgetting that you ever even signed up for them. Anyone else? Okay, because I'm raising my hand here, okay? I have done this so many times and it frustrates me. So I was like, how can I not do that anymore? So I'm going to give you what to do instead. Okay, document it. So these are my habits now. Whenever I sign up for any kind of trial or something that's going to be a recurring charge, okay, I have a note in my notes app in my phone that are recurring charges. And real quickly, I put in there the name of the service. I put the date I did it, how I paid for it. Ladies, how do you know if it's your PayPal, if it's your Apple Pay, if it's your credit card, if it's your debit card, all of those things. So I put how I paid. Then I put, you're going to thank me for this. You're going to thank yourself for this. The login for the thing that you signed up for. So you put the email address that you signed up with and the password. Okay. And then when you need to cancel it by, if you don't want it to recur. If you don't mind that it's recurring, still do all of the same things, just you don't have to put a cancel by date, okay? So now you have a running list of what you should see in these different accounts. And I don't know about you, but I've discovered things that I signed up for and forgotten to cancel. And then I'm like, I don't know what email address that is. I don't know what password I would have used. So trust me, it will take you 3 minutes to do this. And if you will do it every time you sign up for something, you will be so proud of yourself and you will love it. So do this. This habit is so good. So that's what we're going to do instead. And then your call to action on this for this particular fox is in the month of March and once a quarter after. I want you to schedule an hour or less on your calendar where you're going to go through your bank account, your credit card statement, log into your PayPal. They have a section for recurring charges. Log into your Apple account for recurring charges and any other thing that you have that's automatically paying something. Log in there and then just check it. Look to see what's happening. The first time you do it, you're going to be like, unless you're really, really diligent already in this area. And if you are, fantastic. But the first time I did it, I'm like, okay, I feel like Dave Ramsey talks about paying the stupid tax. Have any of you heard about the stupid tax? I'm like, dang it, I paid the stupid tax on that. I just spent $20 for a whole year and I did every month and I didn't even know what I was doing. So the first time you're going to, just bear through it, get through it, and then put it on your calendar to do quarterly. Because if you do this quarterly, it won't happen. I mean, if so, it's going to be cheap, right? But the other thing is sometimes we sign up for something that is recurring and we're like, yes, at this season of my life, I need this thing. But sometimes a year later, we don't really need that thing anymore. So it wasn't necessarily a mistake or something we forgot to cancel. It's just become something we're not using. And it's a good call to action for yourself to say, am I still needing this? So it's an evaluation tool. And if you do that regularly, it will help you. And it will also help you see things that shouldn't be on your account at all.
Okay, now here's my segment from my live session where I offered an insight for each Enneagram type about their fears around money and then a clear action step for experiencing freedom. But ultimately, what I want you to see here is that your core fears as your personality type tend to be one of the things that stand between you and financial peace. It isn't that paycheck. It isn't even your budget or your circumstances, but your core fears feeding into the enemy's schemes to speak that lie over you that you have. It's about you taking control and you doing these things and separating you from the truth of God has got it. So when we begin to better understand our fears, it helps us understand how it's shaping our relationship with money, ultimately how we choose to earn, spend, save, and give, all the key things of how we're using this tool. So as I'm reading through these different things together, as we're looking through this, again, the specific things that I'm sharing on these slides are not actually in your notes or on the resource. Some other details are to further expand on this. So if you are listening to this as a replay or you're watching this later and you haven't figured out your Enneagram type or you're uncertain, just listen to all of them and see maybe what is the thing that jumps out at you as a struggle, as a fear. And maybe there's a few of them. It is worth identifying because I've offered a specific action step to take to step into the freedom that God has for you. So the Enneagram 9s, they want to avoid financial decisions to keep the peace. It maybe feels disruptive, right? To make a decision, or maybe there is a lot of tension and disagreements around what to do about money in your house. But the invitation here, again, it's even like things such as doing the budget, right? You want to step away from passive avoidance and get and actively participate in the decisions about money, in the budgeting, in being clear on where you are and where you stand. I like this idea because it pairs nicely with what Krista Harden shared about the dream date that you could do with your spouse. And this is just a money date, having a money date with yourself or a partner to communicate a financial decision. This actually was such an important action step for us as we were learning to create a budget and live within a budget. We were constantly talking about it. We don't nearly, thankfully, talk about it as much anymore or need to get into the nitty-gritty, but it's really helpful when this is a new way of doing for you. The Enneagram 8 wants complete financial independence, but struggles to receive help. And understandably, right? The 8 is fearful of vulnerability. They're afraid of being betrayed. Will they be in agreement? Will they get counsel that looks different than what they want to do? All of those things are very real fears and frustrations for an 8. So the shift is from financial control, releasing it, to invite wise counsel into your decision and partnership in how you make that next step difference. All right, so in action, we're going to talk to a financial advisor today. That's always a great step and opportunity. But obviously, abundance isn't built in isolation in every area of right. It thrives in wise community. Enneagram 7, they spin impulsively to avoid feelings of limitation. Or I can speak to this as a 7. They avoid the budget because will that limit them? Will they not get to spend what they want to spend? But the shift really happens when you learn to look at the long-term satisfaction. And I cannot tell you what a game changer that has been in my mind since 2009, when suddenly the financial principles being taught to me got in my heart and my mind. And I was like, oh yeah, this is about the long-term goal, not just today, not what I can't or can do today. So a lot of times I have learned delay that large purchase for 24 hours before committing. That has been a good principle, right? So no impulse and I think about it, which is why I use Instacart instead of going to Costco, because I am notorious for walking Costco. I don't do big things, But I do see those box of chocolates and I'm like, ooh, dairy-free, gluten-free, mine. I didn't need that. I didn't need to spend $20 on chocolates. That was silly. That wasn't soul care, trust me. That was just unnecessary. Enneagram 6, their fear is they struggle with obsessing over security and they struggle to trust God's provision. I mean, that's all of us, right? They have such a strong desire for security. They desire to be able to feel secure in those who are providing for them, maybe in their partner who is helping to pay the bills and provide. And there is a struggle over that of trusting them and trusting that maybe God can still provide outside of that partner, that God's care and provision extends to them as an individual, not just to that partnership. So I think that's an important thing to be thinking through. So it really, that shift from fear-driven financial control or really decisions to faith-driven trust, that God really has a good plan for you as an individual to provide and care for you. I think this is something all of us could practice, but keeping a log of God's provision along the way can be really, really powerful. I know that was something in those early years of financial peace. I was writing on a piece of notebook paper month by month the random things that we were being given or how the Lord was providing. And it was so powerful. I even wrote down silly things like our in-laws took us out to dinner, or I mean, there were just silly little things that even now it'd be quick to gloss over, but they were big deals. And it was a reminder that God was making our $400 a month grocery bill expand through these sweet little pieces of God's gifts, which, man, we used to be able to pay $400 a month for groceries. That was so 2009, right? So 2009. Okay, anyway, it's a good practice. All right, Enneagram 5. Very typically known as having a fear for scarcity, right? Wanting to hold tightly a little bit more to it, wanting to hold and withhold their resources, and this bleeds over to money. So that shift is from holding it all to a trust-based financial growth, right? Taking those small risks, sowing in a little bit more generously than you're feeling comfortable of, and reminding yourself that wise spending does not mean utter depletion, right? Catastrophic depletion is a real fear for a 5 in everything: energy, money, time. This is a thing to have to actively do an upstream practice for. Enneagram 4. They might fear financial planning because it feels too structured, right? Everyone does it a certain way. I don't think this system works for me, might be how an Enneagram 4 feels. It often comes to scheduling or to certain structures that feels like everyone else is doing. And they tend to naturally think of the caveats or the differences that their life has, that it feels like it may not work for them. So one of the shifts are from avoiding structure to seeing finances as a creative tool. How can you use a visual money tracker or something else that feels visually inspiring or emotionally inspiring, like having a Paris 2025 fund? That makes it way more appealing and fulfilling along the way. I also think that's a great idea for a 7. Just throwing that out there. Enneagram 3. The fear often is tied to self-worth to financial success. If I'm financially successful, then I am worthy. Then I have achieved. Then I am significant, right? So there can be a constant drive for securing finances for your family, whether you're the sole provider or you're not. The invitation is to shift from performance-based security to purpose-driven finances. Why am I pursuing this? Does this actually align with the values that I have? Will this support the vision that God has for me and that He has given me for my family, for my community, what it is that I really am meaning to do? And so the invitation is to redirect money to meaningful investments instead. Enneagram 2, there's a fear of they tend to overgive at the expense of their own security. They have a fear of not being wanted, needed, and loved. So they will overgive to secure that love. They will be overly generous, overly self-sacrificing in order to feel secure with their relationships. And so the shift is from self-sacrificial giving to wise generosity. That means planned generosity, asking your spouse before giving, or asking yourself, have I actually done this for myself? Am I always just laying my life down for the greater good, right? Am I giving all my friends pedicures, but I haven't given myself one for 10 years? Those are the kinds of things, right? And they are loving and they are kind to do. But are you treating yourself with the same kindness and love? And it's about giving from an overflow, right? From a place of where you have received and knowing that you're giving from that, not to secure attachment, but because God so loved you and you're giving from that place. Okay, the Enneagram 1, there is such a high fear for the 1. Am I making the right decision? Is this wrong or is this right? Is this good or is this bad? Being afraid of what other people think. The shift is from financial guilt to grace-based stewardship, right? The Enneagram 1 has to remind themselves that no decision is 100% perfect, right? It is not about perfection. It's not about how other people seeing you good or right, but it's about taking that progress and setting a realistic savings goal and a giving goal, and rather than analyzing and detailing every single dollar, right? Being hyper vigilant and overly critical about all of that. Okay, friend, I know money can be a complicated and even taboo topic, but I sincerely hope that this podcast episode helped you see that true financial abundance is about so much more than numbers. It's about wisdom, freedom, purpose. Ultimately, it was about what God has to say about money. So if you want to go deeper and gain more practical financial mindset strategies from our incredible speakers, the Summit VIP Pass is going to give you lifetime access to all the sessions, plus additional resources that will help you take action in your finances. And don't forget, several of the bonus materials that are included are only there for a limited time, so make sure to grab your pass before those extras disappear. Check the link for the show notes, and let's keep walking in wholehearted abundance together. Friend, we're all broken, we're all blowing it, but the brave one does something about it.